Untamed is going to be untamed. It's going to be a little crazy. I want to talk to my people. I want to talk to my brothers and sisters. We can have grace and humility in how we interact with other people.
Oh, hot dog, look at you.
And nobody talked about what's really happening.
And let's have conversations about what truth is.
I'm going to play a short video from Edward Solomon, whose data was related to what they were going to announce. They pushed it back till today. So let's listen to a few minutes of Ed. This was this morning at the Arapahoe County Commissioners meeting for the audience. So take a listen to Ed, and then we'll come right back to this when they're ready.
State your name and address for the record, and go ahead. You're live with the Board of County Commissioners.
Good afternoon. My name is Edward Solomon. I live at 190E Trent Court, Ridge, New York. I'm starting with Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, upon which we filed in the Nevada courts. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government. It says shall guarantee, not make hopeful. Any state whose elections are not free nor fair cannot be Republican informed. That's line 1 in our court case. So what happened in Arapahoe County and across America in many jurisdictions, and what's still happening in 2024 with this lockstep parallel motion, it's a constitutional crisis. It's not a clerical error. Now, Arapahoe County, like I said, it's not an isolated incident. Across this nation, in Colorado, Nevada, Maryland, Georgia, Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, you find me any ballot proposition on raising taxes or on abortion, ballot measures that should be split on partisan lines, and said I get perfect lockstep motion between Democrat and Republican candidates like Trump and Biden or Trump and Kamala. These are voters supposed to be ideological opposites, but for some reason the ratios of their vote behaviors move in perfect harmony. And that's because their behavior is being controlled by an external force. Now, when we submitted this to the Nevada court last year, and in that case is still ongoing, what did Arapahoe County do? Well, they released a new cast vote record, one that erased this lockstep motion. But in doing so, Arapahoe County has done the most amazing thing in American history. They proved our case about all the other elections across the United States that are in terrible error. You proved that lockstep motion cannot occur naturally. Free and fair elections do not come with engineered geometrical symmetry. You just won our case in Nevada and across America. And this lockstep motion occurs again in your 2024 elections. And it happens again in your new 2020 CVR, just in different ratios. So now, what I want to know personally is, why was neither the Nevada court, Judge Reynolds, the plaintiff, Andy Thompson, or I, so I'm the one that detected this across state lines, why weren't we notified to these changes in ongoing litigation? Why weren't the citizens of Arapahoe notified until after a half hour after I called the FBI?
30 seconds.
You guys had no authority to alter the cast vote record without disclosing it to the Nevada courts. You have tampered with evidence across state lines. The FBI and the DOJ are already making official inquiries on this. So help you God, start talking to the FBI. I would go to Pam Bondi right now before it's too late for y'all.
Thank you very much for your comments. And with that, Michelle, do we have anyone else online?
Commissioners, I have no one else in the queue at this time.
Thank you very, very much. No, you may not. No, you may not. I am running this meeting. And thank you for your comments. As a reminder, while the board does not respond to individual comments during this section of our agenda, please note that we do listen to these concerns. We take note of the issues for resolution. I can share that a lot of what has been said in this room today has been addressed by the county commissioners, and we look forward to repeating some things and sharing more things.
Well, with that technical adjustment, we'll get back into it. And first thing off, we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Pray that might be truly what we do and say here. My name is Kevin Lundberg. I am just getting things rolling, and then I'll turn it over to our our experts to really speak on things. I am a former state senator, and actually was in the House before that. Spent a lot of years in that building behind me here, and I can tell you that having gone through about 10 elections myself, various descriptions, I really appreciate the need for election integrity, for elections we can count on, for elections that work, that everyone has the confidence in. And that's what we'll be discussing is some questions that have happened in Arapahoe County for the 2020 election. And I'll tell you, there are a couple of questions that come to my mind as a former legislator, and that is, by what statutory authority were these changes made to the records for the Arapahoe County election in 2020? Was the clerk involved with this? And what's going to happen out of this? This isn't just water under the bridge. This is dealing with the integrity of our election system, and that's why we're spending some time digging deep into it right now. And we have with us two gentlemen that are experts in their own fields who can cover a great deal on this. And John Case is an attorney here in Colorado and is quite familiar with the election process here. And then Dr. Doherty is a retired professor from Texas A&M in computer science. He did his doctoral work at Harvard back when Harvard was a university. It's a joke, but not a very good one. But I'm asked that you give them good attention, and we'll have some opportunity for some Q&A afterwards. But I want to just turn it over to these two gentlemen to begin our in-depth discussion on what happened and what is happening with the election records in Arapahoe County, Colorado.
Thank you, Kevin. Doherty.
Thank you.
Thanks. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and background as computer science?
I did my undergraduate work at Oklahoma Christian University in mathematics. Back then, there weren't any computer science departments, so I guess I was a computer pioneer and didn't realize it at the time. Then I went to Harvard for my master's and my doctorate. I did computer consulting for several years for major national and international corporations, various government agencies, including some classified work, and then started teaching at university level. The last 32 years, I taught at Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas, computer science and engineering department. I retired in 2019 and thought I was going to have a relaxing, uneventful life after that. And then the 2020 election happened. And a friend of mine had been running for office in Arizona. And after the election, I said, hey, I'm a math and computer guy. Can you get me some data? And so he sent me the cast vote record from his election. And I started looking at it. I said, this doesn't look right. And we've gone from Pima County, Arizona, which that was, all across the country. And today we're talking about primarily Arapahoe County.
And can you tell us your qualifications, please, to answer questions about how votes cast in the 2020 election were altered in Arapahoe County? What are your qualifications?
Well, as I said, my degrees are in mathematics and also computer science classes. Again, Back then, Harvard didn't have a computer science department. It had the Division of Engineering and Applied Physics. So that's where my computer science courses were. So it's basically mathematics, computers, and computer science. And the evolving field, statistics, is part of that, is called big data. So when you have huge amounts of data, so the Arapahoe County election had something like 30 million bubbles on all the ballots. So how do you look for patterns in that? Well, you use graphs and mathematics, statistics, and I got challenged once in a court case. They said, well, how many courses in political science have you taken? And I just said, voting machines are computers, and I am a computer expert. And they went on to the next question.
So what can you tell us about the newly discovered evidence in Arapahoe County?
Well, this is really startling because one of the first things you realize as you grow up and that politics is partisan, but that conservatives tend to vote conservative and liberals tend to vote liberal. And so when you see something that doesn't fit that pattern, it's not consistent, then you want to drill down and see why. So this particular graph represents a moving window of the percentage of Republicans defined in this election as Trump voters and the percentage of Democrats defined in this election as Biden voters who voted no to repeal the Gallagher Amendment. So Amendment B on the 2020 election said, do you want to repeal the amendment? Conservatives said that will raise homeowners' property taxes, and I'm against repealing it. And so they voted no. Democrats, by and large, supported the repeal and voted yes, except they voted no and yes at the same time in a mail-in election. So 300,000 envelopes sorted themselves into an order such that if you started anywhere in the list, and here the list is sideways, so you're going left to right, this is as ballots are being counted. If you started anywhere in the list, so start out with a list of ballots being vertical, start anywhere in the list and just take the next 10,000 or so ballots. Say what percentage of Biden voters voted no and what percentage of Trump voters voted no. It's the same percentage. And then you stick your finger in down here and say, well, take the next 10,000 ballots from here. It's the same percentage. This can't happen in a real election. So this pattern is a big red flag. And this is just like police detective work. The two questions a detective always asks is, what is missing that ought to be there and what's there that shouldn't be? Well, this is something that's there that shouldn't.
Dr. Doherty, was this graph prepared from the cast vote record?
Yes, it was.
And can you tell us what a cast vote record is, please?
The simplest definition is from the National Institute of Science and Technology, which is tasked with writing regulations for the Election Assistance Commission, the EAC. And their definition of a cast vote record is an electronic record of a voter's selections. So that electronic record of your selections when you vote could be a picture of the ballot. And my lovely assistant, Vanna, will hold the chart from the rising winds. So an electronic record could be a picture of your ballot. That would be a ballot image. It could be a spreadsheet that lists which bubbles you filled in and didn't fill in, or something equivalent to that. So that's what a cast vote record is.
What is so unusual about this graph that was based on the cast vote record? Can you show us with your finger on that line?
Exactly. So on this graph, the red graph is Trump voters who voted no on Amendment B. And you see, as you take the sliding window of 10,000 or so votes, it goes up or down. But notice it always stays below 50%. And the blue line, which is harder to see on this black background, but it's there, also goes up and down, but stays below 50%. But they overlap almost all of the points. So you have to get up really close to find a little spot there where the blue line is above the red line, and a little spot there where the blue line is below the red line. So when you print this out on your printer, it just looks like one purple line with a few red and blue dots here and there, but they're extremely close together. And this is something that can't happen by chance.
Now, what was the Gallagher Amendment?
The Gallagher Amendment had the effect, I'm not a Colorado native, so correct me if I say this wrong, but it had the effect of capping homeowners' property taxes. Is that right?
Yes. And the vote in 2020, a yes vote, was to repeal the Gallagher Amendment.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And so if the Gallagher Amendment was repealed, would people's property taxes go up or down?
They would go up, as you would expect them to go up. This is before the election. You would expect that if you repeal the cap, that if there's no cap, that there's nothing to keep it from going up. And politicians are not known for lowering taxes. So you would predict that it would go up and expect that it would go up. And in fact, I'm told that some people's taxes over this last 5 years have gone up 2, 3, 4 times what they were. So that prediction and expectation was correct, or was borne out.
Now, a no vote on this Amendment B was not to repeal the Gallagher Amendment. Is that right?
That's right, which means keep the cap on homeowners' taxes.
Okay.
Property
And so what this graph shows is that Trump voters and Biden voters voted exactly the same against repealing the Gallagher Amendment.
That's right.
And how likely is that diametrically opposed voters would vote exactly the same throughout the entire election cycle on an amendment that would repeal the cap on property tax?
Well, here I have to put my statistics hat on and say it's not impossible, but you would be foolish to bet on it. So if you were flipping coins, like we flip quarters, heads I win, tails you lose, and we got 10 heads in a row, and I collected from you for those 10 flips that I was right, you'd say, well, that can happen. If you flipped a coin 10 times, 100 times, then, and again, being a mathematician, one time out of 1,024, so 1/10 of 1% of the time, the 10 flips would be 10 heads. But you would stop betting on tails. So what we've got here is 350,000 votes, and this is very conservative. You divided that by the sliding window of 10,000, then you'd say this is like getting heads 3,500 times in a row. Is it statistically possible? Yes. 1 out of a gazillion elections. So if you did a gazillion, flipped a coin 3,500, did 35 coin flicks, a gazillion times, one of them might come up all heads. But I sure wouldn't bet on tails. Oh, you might have some question. Do you have a trick thumb, or is it heads on both sides? Yeah, you might have some questions.
You mentioned that never goes above 50. What's the significance of that?
Well, again, conservatives tend to vote conservative. And the conservative vote in this case would have been voting no, that they did not want to repeal the cap on property taxes. And that would mean you would expect far more than 50% of Republicans to vote no. And it was less than 50%. And so this goes against common sense of conservatives voting against a conservative policy.
All right, now, what does the graph look like in other counties? If you could look at El Paso for a minute.
Okay, I'll borrow your mic. All right, this is El Paso County, so it's the same graph. It is percentage of no votes on Proposition B. And you'll notice that as the votes were counted, that the percentage of no votes for Republicans, that defined as those that voted for Trump, started around 65% and ended around 57%, like that. So, like I say, you would expect conservatives to both vote for Trump and vote no on Amendment B. The Democrats, again defined here as voting for Biden, started out around 33% here and ended up it ended up about 33%. And so this is consistent behavior that conservatives voted conservative, not all of them, it wasn't 100%. Liberals vote liberal, not all of them, it wasn't zero, but the conservative position was well above 50% and the liberal position was well below 50%. So I look at this graph, I see no red flags. I look at this graph, I see 354,242 red flags, which is how many ballots there were.
Thank you, Dr. Doherty. All right, can we have the next board, please? So, did Arapahoe County recently alter votes in the cast vote record?
Yes, they did. And this is a big problem in itself because it's a federal crime to change votes. So the way it apparently came out, and you'll get the details in the report that's been prepared. And I need to say here that this was a group effort. A team of researchers researched different parts of the story, and then I compiled it into this report. And a number of them signed the report at the end as concurring with the report and agreeing with its conclusions. So it seems that an election researcher at Yale University, Assistant Professor Kuriwaki, was studying ticket splitting. So this is where someone would vote for a Republican for president and then vote for a Democrat for senator, so that they didn't vote the same way for two different races. And he was looking at Ken Buck's race. And he said in Ken Buck's race, 77% of the people that voted for Ken Buck were Democrats. And he said, that's not consistent. And so he wrote a letter to Joan Lopez, who's the clerk and recorder of Arapahoe County, and introduced himself. The letter is attached in the report. It's a public record, as all of the communications of our elected officials are. So there's a copy of the letter there. He introduced himself. He said, I'm an election researcher. I'm looking at ticket splitting. I've been looking at the 2020 Arapahoe County cast vote record, and it's inconsistent, and it looks like the rows have been shuffled. And so that set off a chain of events that ended with Arapahoe County changing the cast vote record, and in 2025 saying, no, these ballots voted differently than we canvassed, audited, and certified that they voted in 2020. And that's a problem.
Dr. Doherty, did Arapahoe County clerk and recorder publish a statement on her website admitting that her staff changed the cast vote record?
Yes, this is included in the report. So in response to the Assistant Professor Kuriwaki's letter, again, a chain of events, but it's documented in the report. The Arapahoe County produced a new cast vote record and then put a public statement on their website that explained it this way. They said, when we redacted the 2020 cast vote record, and I'll explain that in a second, I'll come back to that, there were errors. In other words, they admitted that the 2020 cast vote record they published on their website was wrong. And when Assistant Professor Kuriwaki pointed out his hypothesis as to what was wrong with it, then we didn't have him do it. We did it ourselves and confirmed that what he said was correct. And so we made those corrections and are publishing this newly redacted version. Okay, now let me go back to the problem with redaction. So redaction is deleting or obscuring. So if you buy a piece of property and your social security number happens to be in the deed, it's on the deed in the county clerk and recorder's office, but if somebody asks for a copy of it, it's blacked out. So, or same way with the home address of a law enforcement officer or a judge. So redaction is deleting or obscuring data. So there's no way you can take a cast vote record from 2020, redact it, which is deleting things, and then in 2025, do a different redaction, delete some different things, and come up with another one. So what it looks like is they admitted the 2020 CVR that they published on their website was wrong, and then they changed it. And I look at this graph and I say, it's wrong too.
So Dr. Doherty, could you go to the center of the chart there and show us how votes on individual ballots were altered in the cast vote record?
All right. What I did was to take the cast vote record, just the first 5 ballots. So remember, the cast vote record is the electronic record of voter selection. So in this case, there's actually a record of every bubble. So you'll see here under Amendment B, there's a bubble for yes and a bubble for no. And the reason that's important is because you don't just have yes and no votes, you have people who leave it blank, and then you have people who accidentally fill in both bubbles. And that's an overvote. So in a race where you can't vote for more than one, there are some you can, like city council, you might be able to vote for up to 3 or something like that. But if you filled in both yes and no, that's an overvote, then it would not count on that race, and they would just process the rest of the ballot. They would just say that doesn't count. So what you're looking at here is the columns for voting for Biden, which is this column, voting for Trump, which is this column, and
What does a 1 mean and what does a 0 mean?
okay, the 1 means the bubble was filled in. The 0 means they did not fill in the bubble. So here, a 1 means that this first voter, so here's the cast vote record number. So ballots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, first 5 ballots in the list of ballots. And there's no personal identification on this. So you vote in secret, but the results are public. So there's nothing to connect this to a voter. It's just that the first ballot we counted voted this way. They blackened the bubble for Biden, did not blacken the bubble for Trump, did not blacken the yes vote, did blacken that one, and so on. So the 1 means that bubble was filled in. So that's why there are 2 columns here. If I'd actually put all 21 presidential candidates, including Kanye West, it wouldn't have fit on the chart. So this first ballot, every ballot here has 2 lines. The first line is how Arapahoe County reported it in 2020, and the second line is how they reported it in 2025. So this first ballot didn't change. Still voted for Biden, still did not vote for Trump, still did not vote yes on B, still voted no, did not vote yes, still voted no. So the first ballot wasn't changed from 2020 to 2025. Well, however, the second ballot, they didn't change the vote for Biden and did not bubble in the vote for Trump, but this voter who in 2020 had said, I don't want to vote yes, I want to vote no, because I feel like voting conservative, even though I voted for Biden, got changed. And when it was changed back, now that curve turns into the El Paso County curve, where the conservatives vote conservative and the liberals vote liberal. So the pink highlights are the bubbles that were changed. Now remember, it's 2 bubbles for each choice. So here, a yes, no was changed to a no, yes on which bubble they filled in. But the count for the result is that 1 vote for no was changed to 1 vote for yes. You're looking at 2 bubbles on the ballot. So what was changed in the cast vote record from 2020, which they said was incorrect, and 2025, which I say that makes 2025 look incorrect too, was they changed ballots 2, 3, ballot 4 didn't change, ballot 5 didn't change. And overall, an average ballot, depending on your precinct and district and so forth, had about 100 bubbles on it. About 45 bubbles were changed on almost every ballot. There were only 5 ballots out of 354,000 that didn't have some change on it. So even these ballots 1 and 4 that didn't show any changes in the presidential race or Amendment B or C, I didn't mention, that was the amendment about charitable gaming. They were probably changed somewhere further out in the list of races. There were 5 ballots out of 354,247 ballots that were not changed. In other words, 99.99% of the ballots were changed between 2020 and 2025.
Authority, by what authority did the clerk and recorder of Arapahoe County change votes in the cast vote record?
Wow. You're the lawyer, John.
Well,
by what authority can I commit a federal crime? Title 18 U.S. Code says it's a federal crime to alter an election record. I'm stupefied.
now, was the Secretary of State of Colorado aware that Arapahoe County altered votes in the cast vote record of the 2020 election?
I don't know, but people have requested communications and haven't found any communication between them.
Is it the clerk's sworn duty to preserve records or to alter records?
Well, again, what's the title of the office? County clerk and recorder. And if a recorder doesn't preserve records without altering them, they're not much of a recorder, are they?
Now, could we put up the next exhibit, please? No, this would be Arapahoe, the new graph. So, Dr. Doherty, are we looking at a graph now that was made from the new cast vote record, the altered cast vote record, the tampered cast vote record from 2025? Is that a graph from the new tampered cast vote record?
It says 2020, but I'm thinking it's
Here.
or okay. All right. My confusion is the election was 2020, but the alteration in 2025 is what changed that graph into this graph, which looks a lot like El Paso County with conservatives voting conservative and liberals voting. So yes, this is the 2025 change to the 2020 election, which solved the problem of its being inconsistent, which Assistant Professor Kuriwaki identified that the original cast vote record was inconsistent. And now it's consistent on this, but there are about 45 bubbles that got changed on average ballot, and there are inconsistent others. So besides Amendment B, also Amendment E, and I think Proposition 115 still look kind of like that, but we're still digging into other things in Arapahoe. But if one ballot is changed, the election isn't correct. And to have 354,242 ballots, all but 5 of the total change, is just beyond my comprehension.
Dr. Doherty, did the outcome of the election change? In other words, did Trump suddenly win Arapahoe County, or did these alterations affect the outcome?
No, that's very interesting. There were slight differences in the number of votes, yes votes and no votes on Amendment B and so forth, but it was very small. The discrepancy was like less than 10 votes difference between the 2020 and the 2025 version. So it's in essence, I would say that the outcome of the election was not changed. The record of how you got to that outcome changed. To say that ballot number 2, oh, we misread that ballot. It didn't vote yes, it voted no, but then they had a no vote change to yes elsewhere in the column. And so roughly the same number of yes and no votes. It would not have blocked the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment based on the 2025. But if the clerk and recorder says that the 2020 cast vote record is wrong, and this graph says the 2025 record is wrong, I don't trust either. If you tell me the total vote totals for the columns pretty much match, I still don't trust it.
Let me just help us draw some conclusions here. Is the Arapahoe County official CBR for the 2020 election, as it was published in 2022, plausible or implausible?
It's not plausible. So
that's this graph.
That's right.
That's not plausible.
That's not believable.
Now, is Arapahoe County's new tampered 2025 version of the CVR how was that accomplished? How were votes altered?
Well, in the press release that the Arapahoe County posted, which is in your report, they said that they realized they had done the redaction wrong in 2022 for the 2020 version of the cast vote record, so they did new redaction. But like I said before, you made mistakes deleting stuff, deleting some more stuff is not going to undelete it and swap votes. So that explanation doesn't hold water. I lost my train of thought.
That's right. The third point is it legal to alter votes in election records? Is that illegal or legal?
Oh, it's absolutely illegal. I mean, it's against Colorado state law, and the citations are in the report. It's against federal law as well. And there's a long list of crimes regarding election records. It is unlawful to alter, conceal, destroy, basically do anything other than accurately preserve the record. So it's a state and federal crime to alter a voting record.
Now, what would be your recommendation to the federal authorities? Excuse me, Dee, not that one, the other one. About this, what would you recommend be done now that we know that cast vote records were altered?
Well, there needs to be an immediate federal investigation. And a couple of weeks ago, this was reported to the FBI, so they are aware of it. Because there's a federal election on it, that gives the federal government the responsibility to deal with it. Although, if you had only changed the outcome of state races like Amendment B, if it's on a ballot that has a vote for president, I think the federal government would take a dim view of altering the ballot as well. So the first thing in my list, actually the first 3 or 4 things in my list of recommendations, is to collect all of the original data. So we do not have the original cast vote record because they said they redacted it. And there is a law in Colorado that says if there are less than 9 votes in a precinct, you can delete those rows because that would make it more likely that you could tell how somebody voted. Now, when 2 laws conflict, like making it auditable and preserving ballot secrecy, making it audible wins, because you can't audit it, you can't tell it's accurate. If you can't tell it's accurate, then what's the point in having an election? So I'll give you a simple example. There were 100 people that voted in a precinct, and 100 of them voted for candidate A and 0 voted for candidate B. And now you go down the street to your neighbor. I know how you voted. Well, yeah, it was 100-0. Okay, you just destroyed their ballot secrecy, but that is a logical deduction. That has nothing to do with protecting the voter's privacy. So auditability is important. So recommendations for the federal investigation would be first to get all of the original data with hash validations, chain of custody, and so forth. Is which voting machine and which precinct did this jump drive come from that got loaded into the county central computer, by whom, on what date, and what record was produced, to get all of the data, because this is just the data that's public. So there's a lot more data behind it. Collect all of the data, and then collecting all of the data, compare it and see how the changes were made. And then, since it appears that altering an election record is a crime, who did it and why, and what should be done about it? That's out of my department and into the legal department.
Now, Dr. Doherty, is Arapahoe County the only county in Colorado where we see this very implausible pattern of voting?
I wish I could say this was a one-off, that every other county looked just like El Paso, that with the curves of conservatives voting conservative and liberals voting liberal. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Jefferson County looks just like this. So Jefferson County is up next for why their cast vote record is not plausible.
And have you and your team of researchers found counties across the country where we see the same implausible pattern of voting in the 2020 election and the 2024 election?
Yes, we have. And again, it wasn't always the same issue, but it was a partisan issue. So, for example, a question about the abortion law in a particular state might be paired with the presidential vote. So, besides Jefferson County, Colorado, Fulton County, Georgia, which is Atlanta, every county in Maryland, it's not a big state, but every single county in Maryland has this same suspicious pattern. Clark and Washoe counties in Nevada, which is Las Vegas and Reno. In fact, this graph has been entered into evidence in that case to say, there's something wrong with Arapahoe County, Colorado. Why is the same thing wrong with Clark and Washoe counties in Nevada? And that case is having a hearing June 12th, I think, as it progresses. It's Thompson versus Secretary of State in Nevada.
And Dr. Doherty, where can people find more information about this issue?
Boy, that's a good question. Read this report and look up all the links in there. Look at the names of the concurring experts who signed on to it, and then look them up, because everybody has their own specialty. But in a situation like this, we all overlap and pool our information. And that's how I compiled this report and edited it.
Dr. Doherty, we're going to open this for questions in just a moment, but I would like to take just a minute and say a word about Tina Peters. The judge who sentenced Tina Peters to 9 years in prison said this to her: "You are a charlatan who used and is still using your prior position in office to peddle snake oil that's been proven to be junk time and time again. Prison is for those folks where we send people who are a danger to all of us, whether it be by the pen or the sword or the word of the mouth. And this is what makes Mrs. Peters such a danger to our community. It's the position she held that has provided her the pulpit from which she can preach these lies, the undermining of our democratic process, the undermining of the belief and confidence in our election systems." Those were the words of the judge. He called Tina Peters' statements about the voting system lies. You have now seen with your own eyes that what Tina Peters said about the computer voting system was true. So I want to leave you with two questions. What does this evidence say about our elections? And what does this say about our justice system? So I'd like to thank Joe Altman for live streaming this. And I'd like to thank Dr. Doherty and Kevin Lundberg for their participation. And now, if any of you have questions for us, address them to Kevin, and then he'll steer the question to either Dr. Doherty or myself.
Right. So if you two gentlemen could stay close, I've got a question over here. The question is, if someone was wrongfully elected and they actually, if they voted on a bill, what does that do to the law? I think I can probably field that one better, being a former legislator myself. I I don't think you can upend the entire legislative process through that, but you better fix it so that it doesn't happen a second time. This is why we need to get to the bottom of this, because you can't go back and undo everything that a legislature has done. Remember this, the legislature has the responsibility to seat their members. And when they do, then the authority of the legislature put those people in place. So legally, I don't think you could question the laws either. But what you've got to do, you've got to fix the system so it doesn't happen again. Anna. Can you simplify the question just a little bit for me? Oh, very good question. Very good question. Okay. Okay. The question is, where did this information begin that caused the research that was done?
Right. So it apparently started with Assistant Professor Kuriwaki at Yale analyzing the cast vote record, which is published on the Arapahoe County website. As part of his research, he was looking at ticket splitting and said, hey, Ken Buck's election looks funny. It's not consistent, and the rows look like they're shuffled. So that letter is in your packet. So that apparently is what started the question. And then he was analyzing the cast vote records as published on the Arapahoe County website. So he started from their public website data, saw a problem with it, wrote them a letter and said, I see a problem. And then they ended up fixing it. But in fixing one problem, they changed almost every bit. The cast vote record originally came from ballots. Well, it's very complicated. So we do not have perfect chain of custody on any piece of it. So what we would like to have is as a sworn witness affidavit for every voter when they showed up to vote or when they signed their mail-in envelope, and a chain of custody through the post office that this mailman didn't swap ballots before he delivered it. But the chain is supposed to be that the ballot that you mail in is scanned. Computer decides which bubble you marked if it can tell. If it can't tell, like if two bubbles are partly filled in, it's supposed to ask a human to see if they can decide. If they can't decide, then that race is skipped, then go on. And then the computer adds all of those up and produces a report and a record of the bubbles on each ballot. So that's the way it's supposed to work.
Okay, so
The question, just for the benefit of everyone, including people watching, is how did this new cast vote record show up 5 years later?
What they said was that they still had the original 2020 cast vote record, and they performed this new redaction, which was really an alteration going back to the original cast vote record. They didn't say they went back to the ballot images and re-adjudicated whether a bubble was filled in or not. So that's what they said the process was.
Okay, question over here. So the question is, isn't it a bit ironic that it's Peters who actually brought up the issue of saving the, even though, I'm going to add my own little comment here, even though every clerk is required to save all of the records, 26 months in Colorado, 24 by federal law.
Right. So the forensic backups that Tina Peters made still exist long after the federal 22 months and the Colorado extension to that have expired. And so, that in fact was her main motivation for making a backup, is because when Jenna Griswold, Secretary of State, notified the clerk and recorders that Dominion was going to be coming in to upgrade version 5.11 to 5.13, then Tina Peters asked the technician, is this going to delete anything? And when they said, yes, that's how we do an upgrade, we erase the whole disk and put 5.13 in, she said, you're not touching my system until I make a backup. So she made a backup, they made their upgrade, and then she made another backup. And those two backups are still available, so we still have that. And I was co-author with Jeff O'Donnell on Mesa Report 3. So the 3 reports on the Mesa County election are at tinapeters.us. It's called Mesa Report number 1, number 2, number 3. So Jeff O'Donnell and I co-authored the Mesa Report number 3. And the 2 main conclusions are system created unauthorized databases and deleted election records.
Okay, question back there. Okay, very briefly is how did they still have the record 5 years later if the trusted build, which is updated their software, does some of the files? I kick this over to you as far as the question.
Well, the most likely scenario is that they kept their backups. So this is just good computer hygiene. You wouldn't keep your money in a bank that didn't make a backup every night. What if there's a fire or tornado? You'd lose your records. And I want to say, yes. And so I want to say one more thing. There's another federal law, 52 USC 1081, I think, which says you are required to keep a permanent audit record with a manual audit capability. And I'm not an accountant, but what that means to me is I ought to be able to take this 5th line in the cast vote record and have you show me which ballot had those bubbles on. Just like a bank examiner going in and saying, okay, you've got a loan on your books as assets. I want to see the loan application, the appraisal, the history of payments, on-time payments, late payment. I want to see all of the data about that. So there is a federal law that says you have to maintain a permanent audit record with a manual audit capability. So, but the answer to your question is, I would just assume that they were following good practice and making backups and keeping them. No, they didn't have to, because they could have just changed the numbers in the spreadsheet. Yeah, okay. They didn't have to go back and change the ballot images, the pictures of the ballots.
One more question here. Is the cast vote record the official record for election results?
It is an official record. It is a public official record.
Right. Any other questions? The question in the back is, is it just two records?
Yes, sir. They're two sets. So there's one from 2020 and one from 2025, and they don't match. Yeah, you're right.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Representative DeGraff. The question is, and I think you covered that, but it bears repeating. Did the changes change the totals for each of these election questions?
No, they did not. The totals don't quite match, but they're very close. So it didn't change whether Amendment B passed or failed. It's just that now they claim almost every ballot voted differently than they claimed the ballot voted in 2020.
Yeah, go figure. Yes. How can we find out the same data from all of the counties in Colorado?
First place to look is on your county's website. So that would be the elections department, which is typically in the clerk and recorder's office, and see if they have it posted. So lots of counties, cast vote record, have it posted. If they don't have it posted, then find out the procedure for submitting a public records request under CORA. C-O-R-A is the state, kind of like FOIA for federal records. It's just anything that's a public record, the public has a right to see, because they are public servants. They're not our master. So we have a right to see what they're doing by examining their records, with a few exceptions. So you can't release home addresses of judges. You can't release grisly crime scene photographs. But cast vote records, yes, you can release, although, unfortunately, the entire state of Alabama has refused to release a single cast vote record, even though I have offered to analyze them for free if they would give me the data.
Okay. Any other questions? Actually, Dr. Daugherty needs to catch a flight. So I am told that grassrootsconnect.us is a website that will have the report up in about 24 hours. Grassrootsconnect.us. Will any of the information contain any of the Alabama materials?
Unfortunately, Alabama hasn't released the cast vote record, so we don't have any data to analyze. Yeah.
Okay, good. I want to thank both of these gentlemen and all of you for your endurance in a rather unusual setting. The sun has come out, and we can enjoy the rest of the day this way. So, any final comments from gentlemen?
Thank you all for being here. And as I said, it was a group effort, and I give credit to all the researchers, not just the ones who signed it as well.
I'd like to thank especially Linda Good and Dee Pepper, and again, Joe Altman and his crew. And thanks for coming.
Okay, I'm gonna close in a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be in a free country where we can pursue this. We ask for your justice to come upon this entire situation that seems so intractable at so many levels. I do ask for your mercy and grace and clear guidance move through these troubled waters. I pray it in Jesus' And